Team Trump prevails in Indiana, sending a clear signal that Trump is definitely in charge of the MAGA movement. Plus, will the blockade actually end, and will gas prices go down? Trump's pollster, Jim McLaughlin, gives us the latest. Welcome to the Sean Spicer Show. Let's get into it. Good Wednesday, guys. What a busy day. Yesterday, holy smokes, there's a California debate. We'll talk about that tomorrow on the panel because I don't have time to get to it today, but I'm telling you, really interesting. Katie Porter, remember she was the one that with a not too good of a record with her staff yet. She went off a little, so we'll talk about that tomorrow. Plus, Indiana. You remember Trump targeted these state senators that voted against redistricting. He said, fine, I'm going to come after you. They crushed it last night. At least 5 out of the 8 definitely went down big. And one of them went down by like 50 points. It looks like they'll probably maybe end up with 6 out of the 8. That's not bad night. That sent a clear signal. Donald Trump is in charge. And you cross him at your own peril. And then Marco Rubio guy. Oh, by the way, before I get to Marco, yesterday, the Trump administration really trying to figure out an end to this blockade. I'm going to talk to Jim McLaughlin. He's the president pollster, just coming up about what impact this is going to have politically if they can pull this off, how quick gas prices go down, how people will feel the effect. So a lot going on in Iran. And then Marco Rubio, as if the guy doesn't have enough jobs. He was White House press secretary yesterday, and I'm a little jealous. The guy did a really good job. Fantastic job of Marco. Really taking a ton of questions, adding some humor in. Kudos to him. Like I said, maybe a little bit of jealousy on this. Tomorrow, by the way, we've got a great panel coming your way. And then on Friday, Jan Ukalik of Epic Times has this best-selling book. I know this topic sounds a little off, but on what's going on in China and body parts, it was a huge bestseller for a reason, because he's revealing something that's not getting any attention. And I'm excited for this conversation, so you're not going to want to miss this. Again, thank you to everyone who's going out and buy Trump 2.0. Please go to Amazon. Please continue to buy it. I love how many people are rushing out, buying the book. And obviously, if you would like to come to the Trump Kennedy Center, it's going to close for a couple of years. May 15th is Friday night. You go to SeanSpicer.com. There's a little button up there with Trump 2.0. The tickets for the event are free. Larry O'Connor from Town Hall is going to join me. We're going to be in conversation. We'll take your questions. And then there's a VIP reception afterwards. But all of these tickets are available at SeanSpicer.com. Or you can go to the Trump Kennedy Center website as well. No problem there. Before I bring in Jim McLaughlin, though, I got to tell you, I know a lot of us talk about supplements and things we're doing to make ourselves better and more well and blah, blah, blah. But Dr. Dennis Black said, why aren't we doing this for man's best friend? And I'm a huge jumped on the bandwagon as well. I've started adding rough greens to my dog's food. And if you want, they've got a brand new free Jumpstart bag. All you do is pay for the shipping. It's free. Pay for the shipping. They get some toys, a bandana. It's actually my dog loved all this stuff. But the cool part is rough greens is kind of like us, how we take supplements, but for your dog. It's got all the kind of cool stuff that provides long-term health, live, bioavailable nutrients, essential vitamins, minerals, probiotics, digestive enzymes, and omega oils that really you'll see in your dog's coat, in their activity, their liveliness. You see it right off the bat, just like we see the impact of supplements that we take. Dogs are no different. So I add a scoop. It's actually not even the full scoop, but it's just a little on the top. You sprinkle it on top. You get to keep your dog food. That's the cool part. You're just adding. It's a supplement like you would take vitamins for yourself. You're adding that to your dog's food, and it's obviously making your dog a lot healthier. So the cool part is you don't have to change your dog's food, which is awesome. And it's getting them healthier, making them more lively. I love how you can see this stuff. So don't change your dog's food. Just go to Rough Greens, RUFF greens.com. Use promo code Spicer for that free Jumpstart bag. All you do is cover the shipping. Roughgreens.com. Use promo code Spicer. All right. Speaking of good things you can do for yourself, and I've got it. I meant to bring it down today. I've got my Patriot Mobile Puck. It's a hotspot. So you can not just get Patriot Mobile cell phone service, mobile service, but they've got a hotspot that I love. I travel a lot when I'm doing the show somewhere, whether it's the Huddle or whatever. I need good Wi-Fi service. The cool thing is Patriot Mobile has this hotspot that you can travel with. So they've got business solutions. They've got personal cell phone service solutions. They've got the hotspot. I love all the stuff that Patriot Mobile is doing. And the cool part is it's all on the top carriers, right? So you're still getting AT&T, Verizon. You actually can jump between all three. That's how cool this thing is. But they are an activist company. And by the way, when I called Patriot Mobile to set up my puck the other day, Their customer service, 100% American based. Yeah. So you're actually getting someone in California or Texas that speaks English, which is super easy and super cool. So you get this premium service, plus they're an activist company, meaning that those profits that they make, millions of dollars, go to pro-life causes, pro-veteran causes, free speech causes. It warms my heart. So if you want a free month service and to feel like you're doing the right thing, plus get awesome service, go to patriotmobile.com/Spicer, patriotmobile.com/Spicer, or give them a call at 972-PATRIOT. Just use promo code Spicer. You get a free month service. Without further ado, I want to introduce the president's pollster, Mr. Jim McLaughlin. Hey, Jim, good to see you. Thanks for being back with us.
Sean, it's great to be here.
Wow, I need your sunny disposition. All right, I flipped a coin.
No, I am upset about something, and I'm going to tell you what I'm upset about. They're telling me I'm not getting my copies. I bought a couple copies of the book until next Monday. What the heck is going on here?
Wait. You're talking about your copy of Trump 2.0. Amazon said that?
They said I'm not getting it till Monday. I said, what's going on here? I ordered a couple copies last week, no less.
Well, first of all, thank you. That's interesting. You know what the funny thing is? I wonder, so the way I don't know. There was a huge rush. I did Bannon a couple times, Glenn Beck. Yep. I think what's happening, honestly, I think that they always try to calibrate the algorithm. And I think what happened was, a lot of these, anyway, I think you should demand your money back. If you have Prime.
No way. I can't wait to read the book.
No, not for the book. Not for the book. But they're charging you for Prime, I assume. You should say Amazon.
You know what? The reason I can't wait to read it was because as somebody who went through those 4 years of Donald Trump, I want to see what you found out, because we would meet with him on a semi-regular basis. And your point, because I've read some of the previews on the book about Donald Trump was literally preparing to be president again. And I always tell people, I am always amazed about how much Donald Trump knows about how much Donald Trump knows. I mean, he knows about everything. And he was thinking this stuff through, whether it was domestic policy or whether it was international policy. And especially with everything that's going on right now internationally, I'm really looking forward to reading the book.
Well, thank you. I think that's the whole point of the book, is to explain, I think at its core, it's not just that he's successful at these issues. It's what I like to call the why.
Yeah.
And the why is what he did in those 4 years, the preparation of both him and his team. Because to your point, most of these presidents, right off into the sunset. And there's a story today about Barack Obama not wanting to be engaged, and Michelle hates the fact that he's, he literally says, apparently, according to, I think it's the New York Post, which I'm sure you guys read religiously, that it strained his marriage because he wanted to be more involved and she didn't. But most of these guys ride off in the sunset. And Trump, you just mentioned it. He's meeting with you and your brother. What do I need to know? What's happening? He was consuming a ton of political information. He was getting briefed on issues.
Yes.
He did not sit back and say, I'm just going to go play golf at my resorts. He was and that's where people missed. I don't know. Again, it gets back to the reason I wrote the book is that sometimes you have to ask yourself, what's the old saying? What I think Bill Clinton said it, if you see a toad on a post, it didn't just get there on its own.
Exactly right. And what I don't think Donald Trump gets enough credit for, and you know this, Sean, because you were right there. He's a great listener, and he asks people all the time what they think.
What they think.
Yep. What do you think? What do you think's going on? He'll ask you everything about, what do you think's going to happen in 2028? What do you think's going to happen in the midterms? But he also talks to people, education experts. He talks to experts on immigration. And the Democrats always say, oh, he's this conservative extremist and whatnot. He is not. He is not what I would call a movement conservative. He's a fixer, and he's a common sense guy, and that's who he is. And I know your book is going to bring that out.
Well, thank you. The thing that I love is sometimes you feel frustrated when you're dealing with him because you think you've got an answer, right? And he'll say, "That's interesting. I talked to Jim McLaughlin. He thinks we should go in the other way. What do you think?"
Exactly.
And what happens is you realize what he's doing is making sure that you've thought through everything and are giving him the best possible answer or advice. So it's frustrating when you think that you've got the answer because he
Yes.
further challenges you. And he does this with all these issues. They'll go in
Yeah.
and say, "Mr. President, we need to do this." And I'll say, "Really? Because I heard about X." And then
Yeah.
they'll say, "Well," and what he's really doing is making sure that you've thought through your analysis. Like, have you challenged yourself before you brought him that solution?
That's exactly right. And he is such a thinker when it comes to those things. And what he does is he really does, and he used to talk about this the first time he was running for president, is bringing in the best people, getting all those ideas. And what he's brilliant at is synthesizing the best ideas from a lot of smart people. And
Yeah.
it really is. I tell everybody, I've never met anybody quite like him over the years. And like I said, that's what he doesn't get credit for. He doesn't get credit for talking to the experts, and he doesn't get credit for listening to folks. And then he takes the best ideas and then he
Yeah.
implements them.
All right. I want to start with our conversation with what I call the I's Indiana and then Iran. So let's start with Indiana. What is the takeaway in your mind from last night's primaries in Indiana?
Yeah, I wasn't surprised about anything that happened there. It looks like at least five incumbent Democrats lost in primaries. And look, especially in local elections, it's always really, really tough to beat the incumbents. We all know 90% of incumbents usually win these primaries. It's like we've talked about before, Sean. I always say the most overrated thing in American politics are endorsements, except a Donald Trump endorsement in Republican primaries. He is extremely popular. All this nonsense you hear about, the base is divided about President Trump and conservatives are divided on him and blah, blah, blah. I'm not seeing any of that. I mean, the truth is that the base is totally behind the president. And you saw it last night with the results, not just in Indiana, but also in Ohio. All his candidates that he endorsed, people like, I guess it was Conroy and whatnot, and I in Ohio won, they all won too. So it's the power of a Trump endorsement in a Republican primary. It's what I call with folks, it's literally the good housekeeping seal of approval among Republicans.
So is your takeaway then that the Trump endorsement matters more than anything and don't cross Donald Trump? Because that's kind of what I took out of Indiana specifically. The endorsement matters and you'll pay a price if you screw him.
Yeah, and look, I think it's also they trust Donald Trump on issues. And if Donald Trump is saying, look, we need to do something about redistricting in a place like Indiana, I think that goes a long way. And you look at some of the crazy stuff, I live in the New York area, even though I don't live in New York State anymore, but still live in the area. And you hear Hakeem Jeffries and you hear Kathy Hochul yelling and screaming about redistricting. Well, they've tried it 3 times to do this mid-district redistricting. And even the Democratic courts in New York, these are judges that were appointed by Andrew Cuomo and Kathy Hochul, they've said it's illegal to do. They passed referendums in the state that overwhelmingly won that said it's illegal for them to do. But, we all know whether it's Tish James or whether it's Kathy Hochul, the governor, or Hakeem Jeffries, they never seem to let the law get in the way of what they want to do politically.
You mentioned redistricting, and I'm thinking right now about these states in light of the Voting Rights Act decision that the Supreme Court came down. So Bill Lee in Tennessee, for example, the state Senate president in South Carolina, another example. If I were these guys after last night's results, I'd be a little hesitant to stand in the way of the call to continue to redistrict.
Yeah. Oh, I no question about it. And look, everybody talks about like what the Democrats have done in places like Illinois, what the Democrats have done in California in terms of redistricting. Look what they did in a place like New England, all of New England, where you're from, Sean. New Hampshire, we've got a Republican governor there. Republicans get a lot of votes there. Massachusetts, wasn't that long ago, Charlie Baker was the Republican governor there. Donald Trump gets over 40% of the vote, give or take there. Maine, we've had a Republican governor. You know how many Republican members of Congress there are in all of New England? Zero. Zero. Why? Because of how the Democrats have played games and redistricted those states there. So the Democrats have been doing this for a long time, and quite honestly, they're way better than we are at it. And finally, folks like James Blair and the president have said, you know what? We got to fight back when it comes to redistricting, and we got to do what we can. And I think, by the way, the Voting Rights Act, that is huge because it literally cost us at least one seat in Alabama. And it's probably going to, at the end of the day, we have a way to pick up, looks like we should pick up 2 seats. And even the Republicans that are doing the redistricting in a place like Alabama, they're talking about making Terry Sewell's district not a overwhelmingly, Terry Sewell's a black Democratic member of Congress from down there. They're not saying we're going to make this a Republican district. They're saying we're going to make it a competitive district, and that's what it should be. And you know what?
Yeah.
The other thing nobody ever points out about it, you know who is getting elected in these overwhelmingly majority white districts are black Republicans. You think
Yes.
about it. Byron Donalds, John James, Wes Hunt,
Burgess Owens.
exactly. Burgess Owens in probably what is probably the most white state in America, in Utah, they elect a black Republican. So, and I think it's also one of the reasons why the Supreme Court threw it out. They said, look, people don't look at this anymore. There might have been a time where they looked at it. And I always tell people, you get Byron Donalds. I remember his primary, and I wasn't involved in it down in Florida. He was running against, I don't know, 7, 8 candidates, whatnot. And here you had this, state legislator came from out of nowhere because he connected with the people. He connected with the Republican primary voters when it came to values and issues. And that's whereas the Democrats are obsessed with their DEI culture, especially when it comes to their politics, the Republicans aren't. They just want somebody that reflects their values, and they're looking for somebody that they agree with on the issues.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about Iran for a second. So this morning on our morning show, The Huddle, Mike Summers came on our little Huddle Overtime, and he was our guest. Mike Summers is the president of the American Petroleum Institute. They represent Exxon, BP, and all these guys. Mm-hmm. And we asked him point blank, if the war ends today, like the blockade's over, we all shake hands and everybody's good, when will oil prices go down? And he basically gave a very fascinating answer. And it talks about, we don't know the damage to the infrastructure in Iran, blah, 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 blah. But the bottom line in this, Jim, was, according to Mike Summers at API, it's going to be several months that it'll take for gas prices to go back down. That being said, walk me through what that means politically. Because the president, I think, has conditioned people that if the war ends, and Scott Bessent said, maybe $3 gas, the administration has kind of walked that back a little. He'd said $3 gas by probably September. But industry experts are saying it's going to take a while to clear the strait, to make sure there's no mines. They've got to understand the infrastructure impact that some of the refining had to do in Iran. Point being is that I think there is widespread agreement now. It is going to be several months, and the gas prices may go down, but it's going to be slowly. Politically speaking, what does that translate to for the party?
Look, and I want to take a step back for a second too, related to Iran. And it's funny because I was telling somebody a little while ago, I think in a lot of ways the major conflict is pretty much over, because one of the things they've done is they've literally taken away Iran's ability not just to have nuclear weapons and be able to launch ballistic missiles. they've taken away a lot of their military infrastructure. So, and I'm not saying, they're not going to try to lob a bomb at the UAE or the Saudis or Israel, because that's what they do. They're
Right.
terrorists. But I don't think you're going to have the moment, which was a mistake at the time, where George H.W. Bush, they basically said, hey, mission accomplished. You're not going to have a moment like that with this thing, because of just the nature of it. I think in a lot of ways, it's really kind of over. And look, if there's one thing Donald Trump proved the first time he was president and the second time, in the beginning before the Iran conflict, is he understands the economy, and he also understands how to bring down prices, specifically the price of gas. And, when you talk to a lot of smart people, economists like Larry Kudlow and Stephen Moore, and John Carney, they'll tell you that they're kind of amazed how resilient the economy has been, even in spite of this. And no question about it. Where I live, gas prices approaching $5. Out in California, because of Gavin Newsom and his disaster, it's like $7 out there for a gallon of gas. But what I've been amazed at, we've done a lot of focus groups over the last couple of weeks, and these were among swing voters. And the voters are pretty darn forgiving and understanding when it comes to this. They just want to see the prices go down. And I'm sure, look, Chris Summer knows a lot more about energy and oil than I'll ever know in my lifetime. But I think it may happen. He's got to protect his clients there. And he's got to say, well, it's not going to happen overnight. I think it's going to happen. And I think it's going to happen much quicker than people think here. And I think the White House, once they're done dealing and they brought peace to the Middle East, and it's really historic when you think about what's gone on there. I mean, they've literally isolated Iran from the other Arab nations, and not only are the Arab nations becoming bigger allies to the U.S., whoever would have thought that this would have happened, but now those Arab nations have become better friends to us than even some of these European nations. And I think you're going to see these European nations are eventually going to get on board. They're really good at coming in after Donald Trump fixes their problems. But think about this. You've actually got Israel in alliances, building on the Abraham Accords with these other Arab nations. And I think we have the ability right now to see a peace that we haven't seen in mine and yours lifetime. And I've been around for even longer than you, Sean. But I think it's going to come down faster than people think.
Okay.
And like I said, the president has a proven track record on this.
And I actually think that there's some merit to this, because he's not going to sit back. He's going to force everybody, back to the table, if you will, and say, all right, guys, you got to ship quicker. You got to do this. I mean, this is what he does. But there was a poll that the Desert News put out, and it says 4 out of 5 Americans say the Iran war is driving up, quote, the cost of everything. The poll reveals a bipartisan consensus. The Iran war is battering American household finances, and family across the country feel it every time that they fill up their poll or walk through. So they're, regardless of whether it's to blame for every item in the grocery store going up, they're sort of attributing it to Iran.
Yeah.
Again, what I want to get you back on track is to say, okay, regardless of what's true or not, or how much is really to blame or not, the perception, according to this poll, is that people are saying the Iran war is to blame for this. So how important is it politically? The president, I know, you know this now, is trying to get some kind of, agreement. How important is that agreement to success for Republicans in the midterms?
Oh, I don't think there's any question to it. We've got to get to the point where we're bringing peace there. And by the way, I think folks are right. Those 4 out of 5 people, no question, prices have gone up. Gas prices have gone up. We're not like the Democrats who say when Joe Biden gave us over $5 gas, saying, oh, there's nothing to see here and whatnot. And it's transitory and all the other kind of nonsense they were telling us. No question that the price of gas and other prices have gone up, but it's a small price to pay for the folks in Iran for nearly 50 years, the terrorists, the mullahs in Iran have been killing Americans. They have the blood of literally thousands of Americans on their hands. And finally, every president used to talk about how, we got to do something about Iran and we can't let them have a nuclear weapon. All of them, Republican, Democrat, they all said it. Finally, we have a president that has the guts and the courage to actually take them on. And no question, there's been some pain and discomfort for a couple months. But I think when it's all said and done, I've seen this before. I saw this before. Donald Trump's numbers went down during his first presidency at the time of impeachment. And then literally what happened right before COVID, the end of February, and the president talks about this in his speeches, end of February, early March, before we shut the economy down for COVID, his numbers were through the roof. And they were our surveys, they were Tony Fabrizio's surveys that were showing this. And so we saw it because the president won on the impeachment. The economy was doing well. And I think you're going to see a similar kind of effect once everything is taken care of in Iran. I also think we're going to see some positive things happen in both Cuba and also between Ukraine and Russia. So I think it's a really interesting time over the next couple months.
Okay, so we just passed this week the 6-month mark until the midterms. I would actually carve off another 2 months because people will start voting in a lot of states in September.
Yes.
Okay, so if you start with today and go back to what we're talking about when gas prices go down and whatever, if you had to tell politicians, hey, you need the best possible conditions by X date for it to actually sink in, right? Because you can't flip a switch in August and say,
yeah,
hey, gas prices went down $1 yesterday. Like, it takes some time.
No
what
question.
Is it like the political timeline in your mind that, hey, we really need to see progress by, the end of May, beginning of June, July? Like, what's that timeline as a pollster that you would say to politicians, you're going to need to see some glimmers of hope by what?
Oh, I think it's around Labor Day. And I think, again,
really?
And I'll tell you why I think that. I was surprised where voters were in my focus groups. And I've been seeing the poll numbers. And by the way, you've seen some reputable polls out there, where, somebody like Mark Penn, who is Bill Clinton's pollster, basically saying that the Republicans and the Democrats are tied in the generic ballot for Congress right now. Because when we ask voters, what do you think of President Trump's policies? Lower taxes, the tough border, bringing down the cost of prescription drugs, et cetera. About 2/3 of the voters will say, yeah, I may not agree with everything he says and does, but I think those are good ideas and I like those. I think the biggest problem the Democrats have is they're nominating a bunch of extremists across the country. They've supported really insane, extreme policies. I mean,
True.
I can't wait to get into the regular campaign season where we can hit them for they supported the largest tax increases in American history. They're supporting open borders. I'm telling you too, these shutdowns, when we get in campaigns, they're going to come back to haunt them because they were their shutdowns. I know the media doesn't tell you that they were their shutdowns, but during a campaign, you can say Democrat Congressman X supported shutting down, the Coast Guard and supported cutting down TSA, et cetera. Supported not funding law enforcement. This is really extreme stuff. I got to be honest with you. I can't wait until we get into actual contrast campaign season, which I think is going to happen sooner than a lot of people think because the Republicans have resources.
They got millions,
yep,
like
to be able to do it.
So,
and look, they have millions, but as I tell everybody, by hook or by crook, the Democrats always find money to run campaigns. We never outspend them, in spite of what the media will tell you.
So speaking of which, I mean, you just talk about contrast. That's political speak for I'm going to rip the bark off of you. If you're advising Republicans right now, which you are, and you see this in the polls, I believe that I've never seen in my 30 years doing this an incumbent party with more accomplishments to go back to the voters on, right? So you got no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, this American tax car credit that they can talk about. They've actually got NATO to pay. I don't think people really care about NATO, but like they've actually, Maha's made America healthier,
Yep.
put us on a path. Okay. So do you put your chips as a candidate on here are the things that you've done, or do you create this alternative to say you may not be entirely happy with us, okay, but they really suck and they're going to raise your taxes, they're going to open the borders back up again? Where's that balance that you would advise a candidate right now?
It's both those things. You need to define yourself, because I'm seeing it with some of my incumbents that are running in tough battleground races. They've defined themselves on their terms, where they have their own brand, where they're out there every day meeting with small business owners. I had one of my clients the other day was going around to gas stations and saying, "Hey, I get it, but if we get the policies of these crazy Democrats, you've got to do both. You've got to define yourself and have a positive message," which, Donald Trump doesn't get enough credit for that back in the 2024 campaign. Again, he ran on issues saying, "Hey, this is how we're going to bring prices down. This is how we're going to secure the border, etc." And candidates need to take their lead from that, where they can't do it just by going negative on the Democrats. You need to define your own brand. And then when we get into contrast mode, Lord knows there's a lot of issues we're gonna be able to define our Democratic opponents that are gonna say, "Hey, it's failing." And we're also going to be able to say these folks are extremists. I mean, think about these candidates that they're nominating. Look at Maine. Literally, the guy is pro-Nazi. He has a Nazi tattoo. And then we've got a guy the Democrats look like they're probably going to nominate for U.S. Senate in Michigan,
Michigan.
El Said, who is basically saying, "Yeah, you know what? America deserved 9/11." I mean, these people are crazy. They're anti-American and they're extremists. And the problem is, too, for the Democrats, they can't point to really anywhere in the country where their policies are working.
No. Right, and I agree. I mean, we talked with Derek Van Orden yesterday, Navy SEAL, Wisconsin congressman. Like the idea that Graham Plattner, I'm still amazed that a guy who had a Nazi tattoo, and even worse, to be honest with you, when you think about it electorally, said that women deserve their own sexual assault. And I'm thinking to myself, how is this guy like? If you had sort of put a time capsule together and said we're sending you back, and this is the nominee, I would say you've got to be. It's a joke. There's no way the Democratic Party is putting forward a nominee that has those two things, never mind one of them, and yet that's the new Democratic Party now.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you think about it. That back in 2000, one of the reasons why the race between Gore and Bush was so close was because of what Joe Lieberman did for Al Gore's ticket, especially in a place like Florida, a Jewish candidate, Jewish U.S. Senator from Connecticut. And I always thought he was a great vice presidential choice for Al Gore. And think about it. Joe Lieberman could never be on a national Democratic ticket now because he'd be viewed as being too moderate. You have Kamala Harris. This didn't get a lot of play, but you think about Kamala Harris. She said in her book that she couldn't put Josh Shapiro on her ticket because he was Jewish. Are you kidding me? The Democrats who say, "Oh, we're all for diversity and all this other kind of stuff," I can't put a Jewish guy on my ticket because it's going to tick off my base. You would never, ever hear that from a Republican.
No.
I mean, it's just flat out crazy. And then you look at the anti-Semitism that's going on in a place like New York. It seems like almost on a daily basis. You have the followers of Zohran Mamdani who are out there. They're either causing havoc at a hospital or they protest in front of synagogues. Whoever would have thought that would have happened? And I'm being kind when I call these protests. These are usually violent riots that these people are involved with. And thank goodness we still have Jessica Tisch there as the police commissioner, because, she's actually gotten the cops to be able to try as best they can to keep the police. When was the last time you heard Zohran Mamdani talking about, we've got to stop the anti-Semitism, or we've got to let our Jewish brothers and sisters to be able to worship in peace and safety? He doesn't say it.
No.
And that's the new Democratic Party. And that's what's going to be on display this November.
Well, you brought up Mamdani. Let me just there's this, you remember on tax day, he stood outside of Ken Griffin, and Ken Griffin is the president and CEO. I mean, maybe he's the chairman. I don't know his exact title of Citadel. It's a hedge fund. Yeah. Right. And he Mamdani stands outside his home, his building. It's an apartment, and it's worth a boatload of cash. And he says, this is where Ken Griffin lives, which, by the way, was a total, like that to me was a threat on Ken Griffin's life, to say, hey, by the way, here's his house. And he says, we're going to tax the crap out of him. He called it some weird thing, a peer-to-terror tax or something. Okay. So, and he thinks that he's being cute and it's going to fund all of his crazy social programs. Well, Ken Griffin says yesterday, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to move 4,000 jobs to Miami. Suck it, Mamdani. I feel like, what do we need? I mean, that these guys, from Kathy Hochul to Zohran Mamdani to Gavin Newsom, love to talk about how their policies are so great and they're going to tax the rich. I'm not, we all have to pay our fair share, if you will, for living in this great country. But Democrats don't seem to get, he's not getting any attention, is probably the way I'd say this, for the fact that there are consequences. 4,000 jobs of really rich dudes who pay taxes that probably support a boatload of social services in New York are now going to Miami. Welcome to Miami. They're going. And Mamdani, when is this all going to come home to roost, Jim? Because I feel like they get away with saying crazy stuff, and then no one covers the reality of we saw it. California, everybody bolted, right? There's a reason Newsom's saying no to the billionaire tax. He's already seen what happened. Kathy Hochul's begging people to come back from Palm Beach, and Zohran Mamdani's doubling down on stupid.
And Sean, you just said it really well there. Thank you. It is insanity what he's doing. And I've had the opportunity to meet Ken Griffin a few times, and I don't know him well by any stretch of the imagination, but what a nice, good, decent guy. This guy should be applauded, because, and what Mamdani did, that was so dangerous. It was so dangerous because he was basically, for the crazies, for those violent radicals that we see time and time again on the left, he was basically putting a bullseye on Ken Griffin's back, and he was doing it not too far away from where the CEO of United Healthcare was actually murdered in cold blood and shot it in his back. And look, you know who got it? Was Mike Bloomberg. And people are going to say, oh, he's rich. But he was the last good mayor that we had in New York City. I say this as a Republican, that Mike Bloomberg was a good mayor, because Mike Bloomberg understood. He goes, your main function as the mayor of New York City, 1, keep people safe. 2, we can't be raising taxes on the job creators, on the tax revenue producers, because what happens is they have the ability to lead more than others. And what Mike Bloomberg, whenever, the crazy left wingers would tell him, oh, got to raise taxes on the rich, Mike Bloomberg would say there's about 200 families that pay the vast majority of taxes in a place like New York City. We can't be taxing them out. And you're seeing all these failures where these policies don't work. If somebody could say, hey, we have high taxes here in Illinois and it works. No, it's not working. If we have these high taxes in Washington State, for a while you had a lot of people going to Washington State because, they wanted to get out of California and the high cost of living. Now they're all leaving Washington State because now they just came up with a so-called millionaires tax. And what you usually find out too, by the way, when they have these millionaire tax, this happened in New Jersey. Oh, by the way, there's people that aren't necessarily millionaires that wind up paying that tax. Yeah. And, as I remember somebody explaining it to me one time, they said, look, if you're like, you own a deli, or you own like one or two gyms or whatever it is, when you go to sell it and you sell it for like $1.1 million, most of your life, you might have been making like 90, $100,000. So what are they going to do? They're going to punish you for it. And a
I know.
guy like Ken Griffin, he hasn't paid millions in taxes. He pays billions with a B on his
And by the
taxes.
way, Jim, the thing that I point out to people is you don't think Ken Griffin's got a ton of accountants and lawyers that are saying this is how you can put your money in tax shelter. It's not, those policies
Yeah.
don't usually affect the really rich dudes. They
Yeah.
affect the guys that can't afford the accountant and the tax. Right? That's the difference. All right, look, I got two things I want to hit on you before we go. The first is the following. There was a story in the Wall Street Journal earlier this week that the pro-life community is kind of pissed off at the administration for some issues with mifepristone, the drug, and whether the FDA is acting enough. And okay, issue aside, okay, how important is it to have in a midterm election? I would say is a base plus election. If the pro-life community is pissed off, Marjorie Dansfelter, Penny Nance, all these people who are critical to the pro-life community, right? Susan B. Anthony, Concerned Women for America. These guys are the bedrock, the cornerstone, a key component of the Republican conservative movement. If they're pissed, how problematic is that going into a midterm?
You know what? And you've mentioned some folks that I'm friends with, and I have nothing but the utmost respect for. And what I've talked to them is like, look, Donald Trump has done the heavy lifting for them
Of
already.
course.
He gave them the judges.
No,
that,
Jim, and
that
I get that. Like he's the most pro-life. I mean, this guy's done amazing stuff. But I guess what my point is, I'm not arguing the policy pieces. I'm just saying if those guys aren't happy and their members aren't motivated to vote, regardless of the issue, is that a problem?
they need and you know what? I think it is a problem, but they better stop it from being a problem. And I'll tell you why. One of the things I've told a lot of my friends in the pro-life community, I consider myself part of the pro-life community, is we have to start changing hearts and minds. The laws have changed. There's no question about it. But why does a place like California or a place like New York allow abortion up to the moment of birth? And why does a place like Alabama basically, say, hey, we've got a heartbeat bill there?
Yeah.
It's all about public opinion. And it's because a place like Alabama, it's a pro-life state. We need to make people pro-life, and we need to promote a culture of life. And the last thing you want to be doing is going and helping in these midterms elections a bunch of crazy Democrats that are going to be, supporting taxpayer funding of abortion, are going to be supporting things like partial birth and late term abortions, et cetera. Remember, these are the same people that, with Obamacare and the abortion stuff that was going on in there, they were suing the Little Sisters of the Poor because they didn't want abortion covered in their healthcare policies for the Little Sisters of the Poor. That's how crazy the Democrats are on abortion. So look, I am not thrilled with it. I think what we got to do is, and I think what's happening over the years, and look, I'm somebody who's followed this. When I first got into politics was not too long after Roe versus Wade became the law of the land. And people always said, what's going to happen? We've got Roe versus Wade. It basically says abortion's legal and all that other kind. The whole country is going to become pro-choice, over the next couple decades because that did not happen because a lot of people, we value life. We value a culture of life. And I think that's what this is the point. The laws have changed. Yeah. Now it's up to us to change the hearts and minds.
I'm with you on this in the sense that I think more than anything, we need to figure out how do we start persuading people to value life more and the choices that they have, the options they have. I'm a big fan of that. I mean, there's a lot of options that we should be talking about, adoption, et cetera, as we promote a culture of life and how it is so precious and how it's not just some random choice that you make, like you're deciding what to have for lunch. And so I'm with you on that part. I think that's definitely something that maybe we could all come together on our side and say, let's spend a lot of resources on this. First of all, I love our conversations. Thanks for the insight and all this. I hope you get your copy of Trump 2.0. And Jim, I want to tell you and your brother and everyone, if you want to come to the Kennedy Center on May 15th, the Trump Kennedy Center, before it closes, I invite you up to the roof for the VIP reception even. Tickets are available at SeanSpicer.com. There's a free part, and then there's the VIP part. Jim and John McLaughlin, the entire McLaughlin clan is welcome to come. Just go to SeanSpicer.com and get those tickets.
If I can get there, I will be there. And,
all right.
I'm looking forward to it. And like I said, that a lot of times I can't read books right away. I kind of wait for the summer. You know,
I got
do
a
my
stack.
summer reading. I'm going.
All right.
I am. That one's at the top of my list. I'm going to read it.
All right, Jim. Thanks.
That's why I'm upset I haven't gotten it yet.
I know. Well, I'll talk to Jeff Bezos. I'll get you that.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Sean.
You bet. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. We got a great panel coming your way. Plus, as I said on Friday, Jan Ukalik is going to be here to talk about his new book that's a bestseller, top in the charts. No one else is going to bring you this conversation like we will. We'll see you back here tomorrow on The Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.